This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and we have a shared vision for success in business and our personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their process. We intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. We like to start every podcast with a brief business update to our future selves on where we are in our careers. And this week, we finally finished our sales and use tax for Kahuna Cravings. We overpaid on accident, so we actually have a credit that the IRS is going to give back to us. We can hold on to that and use it for our next submission, or we can get it like as a credit back and they'll pay us $50. So that's good to have done and dusted and out of the way. I've been working on more informational training and information for the next business that we're doing, the budding one. You've been doing a lot of editing for the bulk recording stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, finished last week's content, which took a little while, but at least that's all done behind us. So just got the last leg coming up, and then should be good for a while.
Yeah. And I started working on the Alex Hermosi offer course. It's based off of his $100 million offers book, but it's a course, which I like because I listened to the $100 million offers book on audio, and a lot of the visual aspects are really important, and I have to listen to 2 or 3 times over audio to understand, but I feel like I could have gotten it the first go with the visual. And just reading a book is boring to me. I zone out. Listening to something, I can stay hooked. But with the lectures that he gives, it's both. And that really works for me. I can see it happen while he talks. He goes on tangents. I can take notes. So that's been really great for me. Is there any business stuff other than that you can think of? I think it's been mostly editing for you this week.
Yeah, it's just so all I've done is edit.
Yeah.
So glad that, that's done for until we film more.
For the next hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for personal stuff, Mini, I finished the Mini and sent that off to its owner. And we want to talk about our 335 listing.
That's the first thing in my life update. First and only. That's all I have going on in my life.
That's all I have in addition.
Cool. Do you want to give the spiel?
Yeah. So we have a 2009 BMW 335i 6-speed manual with 110,000 miles on it for sale on Cars and Bids. You guys can check it out. The link will be available in the description of this podcast for you guys. And it's a great car. It's awesome. It's super clean. I'm the second owner of the vehicle. The original owner bought it in Germany and then brought it here. And it's in really awesome shape. You guys got to check out the pictures. Everything, maintenance records have been recorded. There's a ton of them. But anything else to add?
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the listing itself. The car's great. It's on Cars and Bigs, which is Doug DeMuro's website.
Yes.
Their agents are very, very meticulous with the listings. They help you every step of the way to make sure that it's perfect and give you the best chance of selling.
Yeah.
And they pride themselves on having a large audience. So whereas Facebook Marketplace, you're limited to the people within like a 200-mile radius of you. This is nationwide, and they ship nationwide if you win. We'll have a video of the car that we've taken on our TikTok available, along with a link to the auction. So we're hoping that it goes to a happy buyer who will take good care of the car.
Yeah.
But it's also stemmed a new business idea that we came up with a couple days ago that I wanted to talk about because I think it's actually very fun.
Yeah.
Which is this process of making the listing for this car was so difficult. It was such a pain in the ass to work with those agents to get exactly what they wanted and to take good quality photos and good lighting, etc. Getting all of the information compiled was really tough. And we had the thought to ourselves, the only reason that we're doing this and going through all this effort is that we don't want the car to sit on our Facebook Marketplace for sale list for months. We want to make sure that we get a good price for it. We want to be in maybe a community where there's people who actually know what they're talking about instead of selling it to some shithead high schooler who's not going to take care of it, right? Because we care about where the car goes.
Yep.
And an auction does all of that for us. So I think it's taken us like 3 weeks to actually get everything put together to get this listing ready. And now we're advertising it. This is part of our advertising campaign. We're also posting in Reddit threads and Facebook groups, different forums online. our personal Instagram and Facebook social media accounts, our podcast, every outlet that we can. I actually went and messaged our Formula SAE chat from college as well. So a lot of the effort that we're putting in is on the back end as well to get as many eyes on the listing as we can. But Sander had a great idea, which is there are a lot of older owners who have had a car listed for like 3 or 4 months. No one's bitten on it because not as many people have that kind of money. And they're getting frustrated because they can't get their car sold. And Sander's idea was we message those people and say, hey, we have experience making these listings and selling our cars for over the going price on Cars and Bids. Let us come, take photos, compile the information, work with the agents to do all of the work for you, get the car sold, negotiate with the buyer, literally take care of everything, and just cut you your check and tell them when they're going to come pick up the car. That sounds like so much fun to me.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
Process.
I'm so excited to get going on the first one. I haven't reached out to anyone yet because I want to finish this process first so that I can get back to people with numbers. Yeah. One of the numbers being average number of people who have seen a post similar to ours versus our post, so we can see how well our advertising actually went, how well our price went compared to the going rate. And there's one more factor, which is how long it takes from start to finish.
Yeah.
Because the pain point for these people are, I don't get the money that I want for it, and it's been a long time, and I don't want to do any more effort. And I feel like Cars and Bids can solve all those 3 things, especially if we're working with the owner to get it done, if we do all the work for them. And we'll take commission, of course.
Yes.
But this is one of the fun like business game ideas that we have that is actually going to be implemented in real life. I want to try this and see if we can get a couple.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun.
And if anyone in the audience has a vehicle that they're looking to sell, that would like help with a auction listing, with photos, with writing the description, with ensuring that everything goes smoothly, reach out to us. All of our socials are in the link tree, which is linked in the bio of wherever you're watching this. So you can reach out to us through there and we will get back to you.
I cannot get comfortable. So I'm all over the place. My back hurts. I did a good back day this week.
Okay.
I fucking want to kill myself. Okay. My first quote to start the week to get it. This is so much more comfortable. I noticed in a video last week, I was sitting forward and I was like, oh, I look great. My shoulders are broad, but I just can't do it. It's so uncomfortable. So I'm just going to sit back and relax. And you guys should too. I heard a quote earlier in the week. I started watching YouTube videos on like just why America rocks. I think this whole episode is probably going to be themed about why America rules. And it's a few problems that it has. But one of the quotes was from a ruler of the Japanese Empire. It's Yamamoto Isaraku. He says, this is from like the World War II time.
Okay.
We can never invade America. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass. And I thought to myself, dude, this whole Russia-Ukraine thing that's happening right now is very telling to how powerful the Russian military is. Because Russia has to be worried about a ground invasion from NATO. Like that's a real concern for them. But America has 2 oceans protecting them. So ground invasion is very difficult. The easiest way for an enemy nation to do it would be through our north or south border. And thank God those are tightened up right now. No one can get through. So we don't have to worry about it. But generally speaking, even if you wanted to do a ground invasion of the United States, everybody owns a gun, right? So I found an interesting statistic, which is for every 100 Americans, how many guns do you think there are?
I actually think I know this statistic, so it's not as shocking to me.
Don't go crazy.
I believe it's around 275.
I found 120. But my point being, there's on average, there's more than 1 gun per person.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Also, my statistic is old.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot more people now because the population increases.
There could also be a lot more
and then there might not be as many gun buyers.
Mine came from like an infographics YouTube video. So
Got it.
Mine could also be very wrong, but I thought it was
We're bringing to you live, reliable sources on Vision 79.
I thought it was interesting because when I think to myself, okay, ground invasion, what's the deal? Like, where am I going to go? Who is going to protect me? Or like, am I going to protect myself? Who am I banding together with? Those types of, like, you run war scenarios. You're a dude. I think to myself, how many guns are actually out there? Like, how many people can defend themselves? Like, if a Chinese tank rolls out of the ocean right now, how many people are going to be able to fight it? And the answer is like probably everyone. Because even if you don't have a gun,
Everyone who chooses to.
yeah, even if you don't have a gun, the guy next to you might have an extra one. Like, that's how many are out there. And I'm new to gun ownership, and I'm so excited to get into it. Our local gun store has a store-wide sale on Friday, and I'll be back because I'm so stoked. Justin just got my friend just got an AR last week.
Yeah,
and it's so sick. I want it so bad. I want it so bad. We'll show up and see what the sales look like. But that's my opening quote for today.
Very cool. Very cool. My opening question to start us off is, what are the core characteristics that make up a strong leader?
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
I'm kidding.
Funky ass last name. That's me. I think that. Do you want a number of them or just
hit me with it? One or two or three.
I think first and foremost is someone who will take responsibility, and not even responsibility for their own actions, but responsibility for the people that they are leading. Because if you are in charge of a group of people and they make a mistake, they're your group of people. They're the ones who screwed up, but you're vouching for them because they're your group. So you need to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult for people to take responsibility for their own actions. And it's even more difficult to take responsibility for other people's actions because you actually aren't the one who did it.
Right.
But I think that's a characteristic that really shows a good leader. So like you'll see in military movies, like the drill sergeant is like, everyone has to have their shoes shined. And then like they come by and they're like, one pair wasn't shined. Who was it? And like the leader figure steps forward and he was like, it was mine, sir. And he was like, no, it wasn't. I know it. Sit down. He's like, no, it was me. I promise. And he was like, I literally know it wasn't you. Sit back down. But he's the group's leader, so he's taking the fall for it. I think that's one aspect that makes a good leader. I think another one is the ability to inspire and motivate your people.
Yeah.
I think that a core difference between dictators and beloved presidents are the inspiration factor, because beloved presidents rule through respect and dictators rule through fear, right? Both are motivating factors, but only one is inspired. They're both motivated, believe me, but like only one of them is inspired. And that's a difficult thing to do, especially when you're working with a large group of people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. I think one point for me is whatever their position is on a given issue, I want them to be strong in that position. Like I want them to have an opinion that they can, I'm not doing this right now, but that they can speak clearly, articulate well, that is clear and that they follow through on, or they take advice from other people who might be against their opinion and then come to a strong conclusion to lead the group of people that they're leading. You know what I mean? I like people who, put their fist down on issues that they believe in and then go through with that.
Yeah.
I really love that.
I think you need to be able to give clear direction.
Yeah.
For sure. Like you can't tell your people, kind of do it this way or that way. It's up to you. Like give clear direction.
Right.
But I think that's a balancing act between being stuck in your ways, and then that ends up being like a micromanaging factor, and having trust in your people. And that's the last thing that I came up with for skills of a good leader is trusting your people to actually go forth and do, and not have to micromanage them and follow up all the time.
Right.
Being able to put your trust in other people is not a natural instinct that a lot of people have. It can be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Anything else? You think of anything else? I think if I sat down and thought about it, I could probably pick up more.
Someone who's confident, someone who's bold, someone who's intelligent, someone who's strong in their presentation and how they speak to others.
You kind of want someone that you're proud to follow.
Yeah.
Right. So usually that comes from confidence.
Yeah.
The difference between confidence and cockiness is the ability to back it up and the respect you carry yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
If I make a bold claim and I can't back it up, it turns out to be cockiness. If I make a bold claim and I can follow it up, it's confidence. But if you do so in a disrespectful manner, you're confident, but you're also a dick. And that can be perceived as cockiness, even though you can follow it up. And that's a tough line to follow as well. Being a leader is a difficult thing, difficult task.
100% agree.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have next?
It's a Hormozy quote, and it's about, I'll just read it. He says, most things worth doing are hard. You can cut a lot. Wait, what? It's the thing is, most things worth doing are hard, but not all hard things are worth doing. You can cut a lawn with scissors, but it doesn't mean it's better than paying someone with a lawnmower. That's Alex.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the core attributes for business is it's like how do you know when to push or pivot, right? It's like, at what point is this going to take so much work that it's not actually worth it? There's an easier way to achieve the same goal through another vessel. It's easy, especially when you are fed the rhetoric of like, just work harder, just do more, like just fucking nose to the grindstone, just give up your weekends and just like grind, right? I agree with all that, but you've got to make sure that you're grinding on the right thing. You need to be working smart and hard, not just hard. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere.
I had a teacher in middle school who, at my school, it was the kind of school where everyone's a winner, so they didn't give out Fs, they gave out Es. You couldn't fail class, essentially. And my teacher was like...
Wait, instead of Fs?
Yeah.
They skipped F?
Yeah.
It went A, B, C, D,
E.
Oh.
So they just didn't have F.
Wait, why do regular schools not include E? Because it goes A, B, C, D, E, F.
Well, because it's A, B, C, D, F.
Right, but like, that's a regular school.
Oh.
Right? So like, why don't they do A, B, C, D, E? Like, why is a regular...
Oh, well, I mean, if you're below 60%, which is what a D is, I mean, you're failing.
No, that's why they call it F, because you're failing. Okay, got it. They were like, shit, like we can't drop the bar any lower. It's got to be F. Except for your school where they were like, we can sneak it in.
We can
10%.
sneak it in, yeah. So they had E's.
Yeah.
And my teacher back in middle school said that E was for effort. And the whole class was like, what? How does that make sense? And he was like, because it's effort being put in the wrong place. You know, kids are still doing something with their time. They're doing something with their life, but they're not applying it to school and their education. And so they're putting in effort. They have the capacity for effort, but they just don't apply it to academics. And I think that's kind of a parallel to what Alex Hormozy is talking about here, because, you know, you can put in effort to something that isn't fruitful, right? And continue dropping effort into that, but it's not going to result in something that's meaningful.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think it's important that, yes, you put in effort, yes, you grind on the project you're working on, but you put it towards something that makes sense.
I continually flip-flop back and forth between my opinion on the education system, because I'll continually think to myself, well, it's important that people have a fundamental understanding of the world that we live in, right? I feel like everyone should understand that plants are rigid structures because their cell walls are rectangular, and, you know, natural body organisms aren't, right? That's why we don't have rigid stalks for arms.
Right.
I feel like everybody should have a basic understanding of the world around them like that. And then I also have a thought that there are kids like the ones at your school who like have drive. They have they will put in effort, but they aren't interested in the basics of the world. Like they are really interested in like welding or whatever, right?
Sure.
Like a trade school type thing. There are these things called monastery schools where they send kids to do that. It's essentially like what an apprenticeship is for someone graduating high school, but for like K through 12. And there's a huge movement of people who are like, get rid of the school system, abolish it entirely, only have monastery schools. And it's a really interesting take that I continually switch back and forth on, because I think to myself, if I had a kid, I would want them to have the same education that I did, because I want them to see the world the same as I do and have the basic understanding I do, because I feel like I have a generally acceptable understanding of the world that I live in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, well, what if my kid hates that shit, just like I did, because I didn't enjoy it, and has this really strong passion for pick a craft, and then I nurture that, and then maybe he becomes really good at it. I don't know. This is my
I think it's challenging because there is a lot of value to a good academic education, right? Like being able to have academic conversations, being able to learn about history and math skills and basic science and stuff like that. Like that's stuff that can be applicable in a conversational setting to other people who are academic as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's important to growing oneself beyond just like a primitive position at a company.
Yeah.
Right. Like you need to be able to convey yourself in a way that's compelling to other people who may have an academic background. And so I see the value in it, but I see the value in incorporating more trade-based education in school, right? Because I think I heard the statistics the other day. For every 3 people that retire from a trade, there's 1 person that replaces them.
Yeah.
And so that's a really tough spot to be in, because increasingly in the next 10 to 20 years, I think that plumbers, electricians, and other welders and other tradespeople are going to become increasingly more valuable as there's less and less of them.
You know, China is having this problem right now.
Oh, really?
They have too many college graduates to the point that they'll graduate college and can't get a job because they're all filled, because everybody has a college degree, so it's not special anymore. Everyone has achieved higher education. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is they can't make enough food and they can't build enough buildings because there aren't farmers and construction workers anymore. So now there are government-funded scholarships for college that say, we'll pay for your college, but you have to go work a farm for 2 years because we don't have enough food. So go work the farm, and then you can get your college degree and live your white collar job, whatever. But that's
really interesting.
It is interesting, and we might be heading that direction.
I mean, it seems like we are.
Yeah.
So
interestingly, I don't know anything about the Chinese education system. Our education system, to me, doesn't fill me with enough. I wouldn't bet on everybody getting a college degree and running out of low-level jobs.
I don't think that's the role for everyone either.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody's...
And I think there are a lot of colleges, too, that perpetuate an agenda through their education that isn't healthy, that doesn't foster healthy discussion and cooperation. You know, I think there's a lot of colleges that take a strong political stance in either direction, and the act of doing so, I think that the political agenda pushed through some colleges really puts a strain on students when they go out into the real world and have to communicate with people that don't have the same view as they do, right? There isn't a lot of like communication education. There's a lot of like idealistic education, right? So I think there are faults in how we teach kids in college too.
Yeah, but then there are colleges like Florida Tech. Like, I didn't have any of that.
No, very true. But I'm saying there are schools that they have a very different style structure to what Florida Tech has, right? The schools up in Massachusetts and in Boston. I mean, I know kids who went to these schools, and it's a very different style of education. There's a lot more political polarization.
Like how are these STEM?
There's a lot of political classes and political classes and education that's interwoven even into STEM classes that pushes a certain political agenda, and there's always that underlying norm of like, if you don't see the world in this sort of way, then you're not really accepted into the community. Like, that's a real common thing up north. And so I think that colleges kind of cater to that because that's their audience. Like, kids grow up in high schools, like in Massachusetts and stuff like that. And so they grow up in that same environment. So when they go to college, they expect the same thing. So then colleges cater to that. And then it just fosters this continuous cycle of people kind of being grouped into one group. And so I've seen a lot of, my friends who went to schools up north come out of those schools with a really hard, steadfast view about the world in one direction, and then they really, really struggle to communicate with other people with different opinions.
Do you think that's like an education system problem, or just the people who live there problem? Because like, if you live in that area and that's the culture there, then you're going to bring that to your job, and if you work at a school, then it's part of it. But like, Florida Tech is a great example. Like, Melbourne, Florida doesn't have like a strong political flavor, I think. Yeah. And like, similarly, Florida Tech, like, it's just school is school. So I cannot think of any possible way that you can make engineering political. It's fucking math, right? Yeah. But I can understand how you can like make political courses mandatory and then teach the political courses how you want to.
There is definitely some stuff I could show you that's pretty shocking from California that I've seen with politicizing subjects like math and science, like really crazy.
How do you politicize math?
Well, this isn't a direct example. This is the example that comes to mind, but recently there was a bill passed in California that said it was racist to require students to pass math and English to graduate high school, because those classes, by their statistics, disproportionately affected students of color rather than white students, right? So the claim was, well, because students of color aren't doing as well in these classes, it must be a racial bias, so we're not going to require that anyone pass these classes in order to graduate high school, right? But it's not addressing the issue that, there's students, a higher percentage of students who are of color come from families that are impoverished or, are lower income families and stuff like that. Like, there's a whole wealth of issues that aren't addressed in just masking over it by not requiring students to pass. But I can't think of any examples, to be fair, right off the top of my head regarding the math and science polarization or political polarization. But I know that if I were to look it up, I could definitely find some because I've seen them before.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be
I just can't pull them up here.
I can't imagine. Like, I think that
I couldn't imagine it either when I saw it. But once I started reading into it, because I didn't understand how that would even be possible.
Well, it's because politics is subjective. It's different for everybody, but math isn't.
Right.
Like, math's math. Exactly. That's the Incredibles quote. It's like, math is math. Like,
right.
But, it just reeling back out to just the education system in general. It's like,
I don't know if it's a fact. I don't know if it's a factor of the people who live in that community or the education system. I think my point is that I think the education system could alleviate that problem by doing a more bipartisan job of educating students. That's my point. At least in my opinion.
Like standardized schooling?
Well, I think that, a lot of literature that's taught in social studies classes in college leans to the left, whereas there's not a lot of literature that leans to the right, especially in northern schools. And so I think that colleges could alleviate the problem of people not being able to communicate with each other effectively by incorporating more bipartisan education and books and literature. That's my point, right?
I think I'm probably just negligent on this because I didn't have that experience. Like, I didn't go to politically leaning schools, and I studied what's it called? It's called like hard studies or something. It's like non-subjective units. I went to an academic prep high school, so it was all like, can you do calculus and do you understand science? It wasn't really.
I had classes, for perspective, I had classes like social studies classes where I was essentially not told, but encouraged to write papers about why socialism and communism could be effective in the United States. Right. So I think that's a very different style of education from what you get down here, or at least that's what I would assume. Right. So the point I'm bringing up is that I think there are schools that definitely push a certain agenda, right? And I think there's schools that probably in either direction push an agenda. But my point being is that I think a lot of the higher education colleges definitely tend to lean to the left. That's my point.
I don't know. I think it depends on the region because we went to a higher level college.
No, I agree. I think it does depend on the region, but I would also argue that even with the region being incorporated into it, I would say, broadly speaking, overall across the country, there's a higher percentage of schools that push a left agenda.
Is it university? Is it private or public university based?
I've heard a lot of the problems come from public university. With private universities, it can really go either way because private universities, it's not really up to the state, right?
Well, and it's not a problem because it's private, so they can choose to teach the way they want to teach, choose to go or not.
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, even with public schools, you can still choose whether to go or not. But if it's government based, then it should be probably neutral. Like for example,
I agree with you. My point being is that I don't think in most cases that it is neutral. That's my point.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. Yeah. But from what I've seen, it's like.
And we could dig into research about this and all that stuff. And I mean,
I don't care about it.
I could, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's
my social studies was here's what happened.
You can see what the comments say. Maybe the comments disagree with me.
my social studies was like, here's what happened. Can you remember this for 2 weeks for the test and then forget about it?
Right.
That was pretty much all it was. But there was very little like, how do you think this would work, etc. It was more or less like, can you remember what it was?
Yeah.
Which I learned better that way, I think. For things like history and stuff, I just don't click with history.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay, so my next quotes kind of tie into each other. So let's run another one of yours before we circle back to mine. And then I'll close out mine in like a chunk.
Sure. Well, mine are also a pair.
Oh, I was wrong. I have another one. I forgot. I have so many fucking quotes.
It's
It's another Hormozy one. And it's, everyone is trying to be someone, but very few people are trying to be themselves. Which I like a lot because I feel that growing up, I very frequently was trying to just be somebody that other people liked. And then in high school, it clicked with me that I don't care what other people think of me. I care what I think of me. And I want to be who I want to be. And a great example of that was I have always loved Lego my whole life. And when I was younger, I would intentionally not tell people that at school. And I would intentionally try to not have friends over in my house because I didn't want to see them. I didn't want them to see my Lego collection because I didn't want them to think I was like a kid. Right. Because when you're like 14, you don't want people knowing that.
I had a Buzz Lightyear blanket all through high school.
It's stuff like
my
that,
girlfriend
right?
came over and made fun of me for it.
But you had
my dad made fun of me for it.
But you had a girlfriend. Right?
I did, yeah.
I didn't. So I was like, like at the time, my parents didn't know I had girlfriends, and they wouldn't have let them come over anyways. And then in high school, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm just gonna be myself. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm sick of pretending to be someone I'm not. And so I just like, it just became a part of me. And like, I wouldn't tell people because I don't want to tell people shit. But if you ask, then I'll say it. And I remember when I did get a girlfriend, she just hadn't asked, and she came over and she was like, whoa, you have a lot of Lego. And I was like, yeah, like they're pretty cool. And she was like, right on. Like, it wasn't a problem. And I realized, oh, it's because I'm owning it as a part of me and I'm not making it a big deal. Like, I don't pull someone aside to tell them about my Lego collection. It's just a part of who I am, and it's natural. So if you ask about it, I'll tell you. But if not, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
And I try to run my life that way for pretty much everything. It's just like, I'm an open book, but you've got to ask for me to tell because I don't really want to tell you otherwise.
Yeah, I used to play basketball and soccer in late middle school, like 7th, 8th grade. And it was pretty much solely just to try and fit in because my interests weren't really aligned with anyone else's.
Dude, on basketball, did you know if you're over 7 feet tall, there's an over 85% chance that you're in the NBA?
Really?
Yep. It doesn't matter who you are, what your athletic
ability that means that most people 7 foot tall or above are in the NBA.
Yeah. If you're 7 foot tall and above and you're not in the NBA,
you should
try out. Yeah. Exactly. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So if you ever run into a 7 foot tall guy and you're like, hey, why aren't you playing basketball? And they're like, oh, that's a cliche. Say, no, it's a statistic. Like, why are you not playing basketball, dude? You could be making millions. Because if you're 7 feet tall, you've got a crazy wingspan. And like all these other kids are working real hard. You can just like pick up the ball and move it. They can't do anything about it. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this one guy right now who's got a wingspan of like 9.5 feet or something.
What?
And people have to take full steps to get from one hand to the next. You can't just lean and cover it. You have to take an entire stride. It's wild. Yeah.
That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, I don't watch basketball, so that might all be like a little bit wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly there.
It's got spirit.
Yeah.
What was the original question?
What question?
Got it. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember the quote.
Yeah, it was a quote.
Yeah.
It was everyone's trying to be someone. Very few people are trying to be themselves.
Yes.
I think that's why I like Hormozy a lot, is because he doesn't. I don't feel very frequently that he's trying to impress or trying to be someone else. He's just him. So a great example of that was in his podcast, he talks about the shit that he wants to talk about. That's it. And in the Iced Coffee Hour podcast that he did, they were asking him questions like, you know, what do you like to eat? And like, what kind of cars do you like? Or what music do you listen to? Like, what personal stuff are you interested in that most people would share in hopes that other people like them for it?
Yeah.
But Alex doesn't share because why would I tell you that? It doesn't matter. You can ask and I'll answer. And he answered on the Iced Coffee Hour. But
yep.
he doesn't bring it up otherwise because he is not self-reflecting. Like he doesn't expect people to look at him. He doesn't want that attention.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
a lot of people, I think, are like, most people ask questions because they want to share their answers, not because they care what the other person's answer is.
Sure. I hear you.
Good. I had that burp stuck for like 10 minutes. I feel so much better.
I'm so happy for you.
What's your next quote or question?
Well, I have that pair.
Go for it.
I got our pair. So, as probably most of you know at this point, there was a Trump rally in Pennsylvania with President Trump. And we're going to go into that a little bit. But I wanted to hit this topic off with, what do you think at its core brings about the political divide in our country today?
Extreme views.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. It's just the fact
Do you think it's
that
lack of communication, or do you think it's extreme views?
I think it's extreme views for sure. I think that there's plenty of.
Do you think it's the propagate? Do you think it's the magnification of views that aren't that extreme that then become extremified? Extremified? Is that a fucking word?
Erectified?
Whatever. You guys get what I mean. Through social media and through the general media, or do you think they're extreme views at their core and then they're just broadcast as they are through the media?
I think what makes an extreme view is the vilification of people who don't agree. It's like, you can have a moderate view. Like, I can pick a topic, abortion, right?
Sure.
One end of the spectrum is it should never be allowed. Every child conceived should be a child born.
Sure.
And the other end is you can choose, you can do it yourself. We sell kits that you can do it on your own, right? A moderate view would be you can choose for the first 2 trimesters, but by the 3rd trimester, you've given up your right and you have to have the baby unless there's a threat to the mother or you didn't know that you were pregnant until that point or something. Right. And that does happen. I had a friend in high school who was dating this girl. They ended up breaking up. And then he got a phone call like 6 months later and she had a kid. And he was like, what? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, no, like I did. Because some women carry and don't know it because they don't present, which is wild because most women present. But anyways, I digress. You could pick a moderate stance like that, right? But if I pick that moderate stance and I say anybody who disagrees with me is and then just pick an insult, that's the problem. That's the problem.
I got you. I would agree with that, and I would come at it from the angle of, I think a lot of moderate views are expressed in a light that makes them seem extreme. And I think that people can communicate with each other, and I have evidence of people from the left and the right communicating with each other effectively, but then when it's online or it's through a news media outlet, there's a separation of like the person from the view. Mm-hmm. So it's just like you're not attacking a person anymore, you're attacking the view. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's easy to spread hate on those platforms. So I personally think it's an issue of communication for me. You know, I don't think people can effectively talk with one another and communicate through digital platforms like they can in person.
I've seen a lot of people get into verbal arguments as well. And I think it's not true because of a lack of communication. I think it's because people don't like to be disagreed with. Mm-hmm. And I'm speaking generally here, not everybody, obviously, but I think that the people who make it on the news, right? There are a lot of political conversations that happen that don't get out of hand. I have them every once in a while with some of my friends from college. Yeah. And it's like, did you hear about this happening? Oh, yeah. You know, that I don't agree with it. And I'm like, I think I do. And that's it. I think that the vast majority of people are like that. Mm-hmm. But the ones that make it on the news or in viral TikToks and stuff are the people who get emotional because if somebody holds a different opinion than them, then they feel personally attacked by that. So insults start to fly. Because if you don't think my way, then get on the highway, you know?
Yeah. I would agree with that.
You could say it's communication, but I think that the only reason that toxic communication happens is because these people feel so passionately about their opinion. Because you can feel passionately about your opinion and you can communicate that in an adult way, but eventually your colors are going to start to show. Mm-hmm. You know, like you can tell when you're having a conversation with somebody and they're pissed off and you're like, hey man, I'm sensing tension here. They're like, yeah, I am sensing tension here because fuck you for this and that. And then they get upset with it.
Right.
I think that's really what it comes down to, is people get upset that they don't get their way.
I hear that side of it too. I hear that.
It's also fucking silly because it's like, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And like, I think one of the reasons that I hate politics in general is it's like, why are we talking about it? What is this going to do? Like, what's the outcome here? Are you going to do something about it? If you're going to do something about it, stop talking to me and go do something about it. If you're going to get your law degree and then get a position in Congress and then go up and vote and be a member of the congressional party, go for it. If you're going to go to your local ballot box this November and vote, go for it. That's it.
Let's think it's really important to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, then we completely lose communication between parties or different people who have different views, and we completely lose that ability. If no one talked about politics and no one talked about these issues and no one thought about them in a group setting, I think that we'd lose huge value.
I think that it's dependent on your perspective of it. If you're looking for change and you're looking for other people's opinions, sure. But I think that most political conversations are driven by the urge to change others' opinions. Sure. I don't feel very many people are like, I'm not comfortable with how I feel about this, and I would like to know what you feel so that maybe I can change. Very commonly people will set up tables at college campuses, the change my mind tables or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's not because they want to have their mind changed. That's because they want to argue with people. It's using the plight of change my mind, but they've never once shown any inch of sway in one way or the other. They are stuck in their views, which is fine. But why am I listening to you guys argue about it? It doesn't do anything.
Well, I think to the person, sometimes those change my mind people have a very hard, steadfast opinion that they can back up with factual evidence, and the people arguing against them don't always have that same factual base.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes the point is just to vilify the person who's arguing with the change my mind guy. And then sometimes the point is to get the people arguing with the change my mind guy to think about their view in a critical manner and think if it's an emotional view or if it's an analytical view, and then reconsider their thought based on that.
Right. But that's change your mind, not change my mind. I'm coming here with my table to try and change your mind. Because I have yet to see a video of someone bring a table to a college campus, say, change my mind, and then leave saying, you know what, man, I changed my mind and I'm now on the
Yeah, I think the wording of the slogan has been misused in that sense, but I don't think that I don't know. I don't think I would agree that it's a negative thing, right? I think that communication and that debate style can have a positive influence, or it can at least get people to think about their views, and that I appreciate personally.
It can, I guess. You could say that. I haven't seen it. From the vast majority of what I've seen there is it's trolling for views, and you're there to change someone else's mind because you have all of your facts and all of your sources and you have your opinion. Awesome. Good for you. I support you. You did your research. You feel that way. But then you're initiating conversation with the ploy of change my mind. It's not an invitation. It's a challenge because you are not going to change your mind. There's nothing I could say to you to change your mind apart from me saying, oh, all of your sources are actually incorrect. Here's why. And then here is more accurate data. At which point you would still argue where I got my data from and you still wouldn't change your mind. You're here to start an argument with me and hoping that I change my mind to get to your side. That's why you're here. But the change my mind is just one example of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm generalizing.
I see that perspective too. I would at least like to think that there are some honest, good people that want to have a conversation that go through that change my mind billboard, concept.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely see both sides of it, and I get that.
I've been in a lot of conversations with irrational people and with rational people. The first time I learned about politics was in 2020 when the first election with Trump, or the second election with Trump was rolling around. And I sat down with my girlfriend's sister's fiance, who was a political science major in college. And so he was all over the political shit. And he was like, "Are you like which way are you voting? Are you Republican or Democrat?" And I was like, "I don't know what those words mean." And he was like, "You're 20 years old and voting in 6 months. You don't know what Republican and Democrat mean?" And I was like, "Uh-uh." He was like, "Did you take like AP US history in high school?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Did you pass?" And I was like, "I think so." And he was like, "How did you not learn any of this?" And this girl's dad was a history teacher in high school. So they were like, "What the fuck?" So they were like, "Let's sit down and let's talk about political stuff. And like, I'm going to ask you a series of questions and we're going to figure out which one you are." Then I was like, "Okay." And it was me, the guy, and then my girlfriend and her sister. And my girlfriend and her sister, they're all very left leaning. And my girlfriend and her sister are very emotional. And the guy was very rational. And so the guy and I were having a conversation. And as I was answering questions and speaking about scenarios and having these conversations, a lot of my views didn't align with what they valued. And my girlfriend and her sister got so hysteric that they left the room and they went in another room to shit talk me while I had this conversation with this guy. And he would literally like pitch a scenario and be like, "What do you think?" And then I would tell him what I think. And then he would be like, "Okay, good thought. I disagree and here's why." And then I would go, "Yeah, but here's an issue with that." And he goes, "I think this, whatever." And I would be like, "Okay, I guess we just don't agree on this one." He's like, "Yeah, but it's good to know this is how you feel. We'll check the box for whatever side it was on." And we went through that until we figured out like which way I should expect to vote that year. And then obviously you listen to the debates and everything to be an informed voter. But that is the only, I think, constructive political conversation that I've ever had in my entire life, because it was generally, "I'm negligent. Help me figure out what I'm doing here." Because most people know how they feel like right away. And most times that doesn't change unless you're presented with new information. And even then, I think that a lot of politics is based on your moral compass, and that doesn't change very frequently. I think it changes over the course of a lifetime.
I don't know if that's the only constructive conversation that you've had politically. I mean, I know for a fact that you've changed my mind about certain subjects by educating me on them when I was ignorant.
Right, but I wasn't trying to change my mind with those conversations with you. I was trying to change your mind.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't enter political conversations expecting to have my mind changed anymore. I try to avoid them, generally speaking.
Yeah,
because I find them to be polarizing.
Sure.
When in 2020, I first learned about politics. I learned about my politics. It got reactions out of my girlfriend and her sister that I thought were funny. And so I started to become a very politically charged person. And like every conversation I had would come back to politics. And I eventually recognized like, oh, I go into a conversation with a person who I'm friends with. And then either they love me because they agree with my political views, or they hate me because they don't. And I'm sick of that. I don't want that. I don't want someone to love me or hate me. I want someone to be like just perfectly neutral with me. That's my happy space. So I stopped talking about it. And of course, as presidential elections roll around, I try to get more into the news and more informed again.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it ends up in a couple more conversations, which generally speaking, I don't enjoy, but I need to be informed if I'm going to vote, and I intend to.
Sure. Well, let's skip my next section then.
Okay.
Why don't you go through your duplicate quote? And I'll come up with a different question.
My quote is from the new Eminem album. Speaking of polarizing, Eminem is hugely polarizing, but I like his music.
He does make good music.
And this is about fat people, so you'll enjoy it. And then I have a Hormozy quote that speaks to it.
As we talk about not being polarizing.
Pretty much.
Very nice.
Yep. Eminem's lyrics are, "We should coddle fat people. Yeah, here's a concept. Let's celebrate onset diabetes, and instead of us dieting, we can just have a pie eating contest. And we should be extra nice instead of honest, and instead of exercise, it's easier to find a XXX your size and try to press society to change so you don't have to change." So essentially, Eminem is saying it's easier to just buy bigger clothes than it is to eat right and exercise every day and then tell other people they're wrong instead of you being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the Alex Hormozy quote that complements that is, "It's never been easier to start a business. It's also never been easier to do nothing." And I think those fit beautifully well together, because most people, I would argue, are like water. They take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
It's easier to not eat right and to wear big clothes. It's easier to not start a business and just like watch TikTok.
Oh, by the way, I went to the gym this week.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's good.
Yeah.
Where's my money? That's fine. I'm just busting your balls. But the whole new Eminem album is awesome. And most of it is just like, silly shit. But this one I thought was interesting when I connected it to the Alex Hormozy one. And I think that I can also tie this to a David Goggins moment when he talks about like, do things that are hard because it's good for your body and your mind.
Uh-huh.
And many people don't. And I think one of the reasons many people don't is because it's never been so easy to.
Yeah.
Because think like the 60s, right? Like the 60s, you didn't have a choice but to go to work.
Yeah.
Right? Like there was no other way to live.
Even think back then, there wasn't even an unemployment safety net.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So it was like there was really no safety net.
Yeah. It was like work or be homeless, right?
Right, exactly.
And I don't think it was customary to like crash on friends' couches or anything back then. So it was like work or you're done. And these days it's so easy to like file for unemployment or bum with your parents or bum at home. Like society has changed to be more enabling. And it's so much easier to sit and binge Netflix than it is to try and learn and educate yourself outside of work.
Sure.
And I like that Eminem brings attention to that. And it's interesting to me that Eminem does it in one way and Alex Hormozi does it in another, but it's essentially the same message.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I hear that. I have an ending topic. Are you done with your quotes?
I have bonus quotes if we want to go for them, but
I mean, either way.
Do you want to end the podcast with yours?
It does not matter to me at all.
Okay, let me read my last two then. They're two Hormozi ones. Impatient with inputs, patient with outputs. Be in a huge rush to do stuff, and then don't expect it to happen right away.
Yeah.
And then good salespeople listen to
Have we talked about the slot machine concept on this?
What's the slot machine concept?
You know, it's the Hormozi slot machine?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So the premise is that there are 3 slot machines.
Okay.
And you have an infinite number of coins.
Okay.
But you can only choose to sit at one machine, right? Uh-huh. And the machine you choose is the machine you get. But you can sit there and pump it all day long.
Okay.
As much as you want.
I sit there and pump it all day long with your mom. All right.
That's right. First machine is $100,000 grand prize. It takes 1 week to get a prize out of it.
Okay.
It takes 1 week to get a $100,000 prize out of that machine.
Got it.
The next machine is a $1 million prize machine, and it takes 1 year to get $1 million out of that machine pumping coins into it. Mm-hmm. And then the last machine is a $1 billion machine, and it takes 5 to 7 years to get the billion out of that machine. You don't know. You just sit there and pump, right? Now, when people are asked what machine they'll choose, 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, well, I'll just sit there at the $1 billion machine until I get my 1 billion. It'll take 5 to 7 years, but whatever, it's way more money, so I'll do that, right? But what people actually do in life is they sit there at the $100,000 machine and keep putting coins into it, right? So they say they'll do one thing that requires patience, right? And waiting for the outcome as you put input in.
Right.
But in reality, they want quick input and quick output, and they don't have the patience for the output. Yeah. Right. And so I think that goes along with...
Does he say that quote at the end of the slot machine thing?
I've never heard that quote before, and I listened to the slot machine episode, so I don't think so. But I mean, they are tied together.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It sounds like something that is included in the same like sentence.
Yeah, no. I mean, he goes over similar topics pretty frequently. I don't remember what podcast that slot machine was from, but yeah. It was an interesting concept, and it really hit me. I was like, man, like people really do sit at the $100,000 machine and then say they would wait if they could make it.
How long is the $100,000 slot machine? How long do you have
I
to
don't
sit there?
remember what he said. He said something like a day or a week. I don't know. Yeah.
In real life, it's like
the point is that once you get that return, then you're like, I think the point is that once you get your return, that's all you get, right? Yeah. You can't sit there week after week after week at the $100,000 one and collect $100,000 every week. Once you hit your jackpot, you leave. Yeah. Right. People will say they'll go for the $1 billion one, but in reality, people sit there at the $100,000 one waiting for the $100,000 to come out, and then so they can leave.
Well, because you have to sit there and like give up your entire life for like 5 or 7 years to get to $1 million.
Yeah.
But could you imagine, dude? What were you doing 5 years ago?
What year was it? 2019?
2019.
I was preparing to go to Florida Tech. I was graduating high school at this time 5 years ago. Probably doing one of my last outdoor shifter car practices in Massachusetts. Getting ready to go to college. I'd probably just broken up with my girlfriend at this point too.
Man, what a dog. Is that kid 10 years away from being a billionaire? Because that's 5 years from now. What about something more realistic? What about like a multi-hundred millionaire? Because that's more realistic.
If 5 years ago, would I have thought in 10 years I'd be a multi-millionaire? You know,
Right, you really far behind your goals.
No.
You're like, I'll be a billionaire in 5.
No,
right now
I think that I had the dream to make it. Like I think it wasn't even just a dream. It was like, this is going to be my reality. This is what it's going to be. Like I still had that vision back then, you know, and I was pursuing it in a way that I thought would get there. Although I had much more racing aspirations back then too. I wasn't really focused on money. I was focused on how can I race, and I didn't really make the connection to I need to make money to race, right? You know, although that's a really easy, simple connection, I didn't really
your kid
understand. You know,
understand.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'd answer yes in some ways. Like I think that 5 years ago, I still had that drive to be like, yeah, I'm gonna make it big. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna figure this out, right? Because I was at that point, I was already into trading. I was already interested in money and how people make money by what they do, not how much time they spend.
If you told me if a fucking time portal opened up right over there in the kitchen and some future me walked out and said, hey, dude, 5 years from today, you're going to have $300 million, I wouldn't believe him. There's no way. I don't believe a fucking word he says. I hope. I know I'll get there someday, but I can't put a time on it. I can't picture... Because it's
my point is I'm not in a rush to get to that point.
Right.
But if someone came out and told me that I had to make it at that point, then I would believe it because it feels believable to me.
Yeah, it still feels like unbelievable to me. It still feels wild. It still feels like a goal, like I'm reaching.
Oh, for sure. But it definitely is a goal that I'm reaching. I'm far away from it, but I think it feels more believable than unbelievable. Yet the difference between the two isn't very large. Like it's like 55% believable, 45% not believable.
Got it.
Right?
I see what you're saying.
I'm just like just over that crest.
Got it.
You know?
Yeah.
Because there are some days where I'm like, how the fuck am I going to afford
rent?
You know?
Food.
But there are other days when I wake up and I'm like, no, I'm going to make it. Like, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome.
The car stuff has gotten me really fucking amped recently. I think that's so much fun. It's not a woman in a red dress because this isn't like the scalable, like the thing, but we've been grinding for so long on this current project without like a dollar return that I'm starting to feel like, okay, like I'm ready for a win now, you know?
I think
I haven't won in a long
my
time.
goal of it is, can we generate a few more grand before we start to help us with the process of getting it up and running?
Yeah.
That's my goal with it. I don't want it to turn into something that's
Me too.
a real business or whatever.
Me too.
But just something to alleviate the financial concern as we build up.
Me too. Do you think you want to, knowing what we know now from the Cars and Bids auction, when we sell this 335, a week from now we'll have, let's just say the car sells for 10, right?
Sure.
And so the X amount of money hits your account, X amount of money hits my account. Or like I'm not proposing anything. I don't even feel one way or the other. Do you think you would prefer to talk to the old guy Porsche owners and try and sell their cars, or look for a good deal for us to reinvest in another car and double our money? What scratches your fancy? Or maybe both. I mean, both are an option. I think that
if we get some bites on doing the auction for people, it's not terribly hard to wash a car and take good photos and do the listing stuff, because that's all laptop stuff that can be done late at night, right?
Yeah.
The hard thing for me with buying another vehicle is you go to look at it, and if you bring cash that day, you bring it back, right? But then you got to go to the DMV, which is, some time off work to do the appointment and set it all up and get it going. And then you do all the same stuff that you would do in terms of pictures and cleaning. And then there's going to be some maintenance stuff that you probably want to do to get it, listed a little bit, right? I think you can capitalize on other people having done the maintenance and having spruced the car up to sell and you can capitalize on that and not make as much money, but save yourself time and make enough money to where it's worth it. That's, I think, my take on it.
Those are great points.
You know, although at the same time, I really do see the aspect of, you know, if we find, I don't know, some BMW for $500 in a Jolly Rancher and it can sell for $7, I don't know, right?
Right.
That's something that would be silly to pass up.
Right.
Right. So I think it's a factor of, does this make sense in terms of a time perspective?
Mm-hmm.
How much work does it need? Like, it's really got to be the car to do it with.
I think that the car we have right now is the car to do it with. We would have to have another screaming deal slap us in the face. Yeah. And I don't think those are the deals that you stumble across on Marketplace.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying here.
Right.
So I think I agree with you. And all the extra overhead, if we're looking at dollars per hour, input versus output, buying the car is less profitable than working on commission for someone else. Because even if we get, you know, $2,000 commission, right? We don't have to pay insurance. We don't have to pay title fees. We don't have to wait as long, etc. I totally agree with you. And I think that we can do it for sure. No, I think we can. I think this is a great opportunity to work some like door-to-door sales type of stuff,
right,
for us, and I'm getting excited for it. I think that if we can get one, I would probably buy a gimbal for us to do more videos, because that video, I love that video that you did.
But I need a gimbal for it because it's a little bit
right. And that's my thinking. Like if we do like a professional one, like I would go in on one with you or just outright buy it, because I love that video so much.
And I think it's important to note too that the 335i that we're selling right now, we got, and we bought originally to just be another car for us, and decided to sell it, and we put some work and money into it, so that wasn't even like the perfect deal, right? It
was a good deal for us.
It was a good deal for us because we could do the work and do the stuff that it needed and whatever, right? But I think we could be even more picky if we really wanted to, if we at least wanted to wait for something and be patient, right?
Yeah.
So, there's factors at play here that we could weigh as we look at Marketplace. And the beauty of this whole thing is that we're going to be surfing for Marketplace to find people who we want to sell their car for them, right? And at the same time, we're going to be surfing Marketplace so we can see deals out there that we could buy ourselves, right? So it's from the research perspective, neither one is separate, right? It's the same research, right? And you just do it and you find something. It just varies on what you do with it. And that's just a question of, okay, logistically, how does this all come out?
Right. So you've got one last thing. Actually, let me restart that instead of this. What's your last comment or topic?
So my last topic is regarding something that you actually showed me this week. That
balls?
No, not your balls. Although those were beautiful, and I really do appreciate you showing me those.
Dude, no.
You walked yourself into that.
What did I show you?
You showed me an Agera RS that was absolutely magical.
The Chimera.
This car was commissioned by the head of the FIA,
Mohammed bin Salem.
Yep. And why don't you tell the audience a little bit about it?
Mohammed bin Salem, the commissioner of the car and the owner of the FIA, had Christian von Koenigsegg make an absolute fucking monster of a vehicle. It's an Agera RS with the Yasko motor in it and the Yasko manual automatic transmission. So it has the 9-speed, light speed automatic transmission if you want to drive it dual clutch auto. It also has a simulated manual transmission. It looks like a Huayra transmission, but it's gated.
Yep.
And it is meant to give exact feedback to feel just like you're driving a manual transmission.
Well, that's because you sort of are. Do you know how those works?
Yes.
So for the audience who doesn't know, those cars have 9 clutches. And when you engage a gear in manual or in auto mode, when the car engages a gear for you or you engage a gear, you engage one of those clutches that then engages one set of those gears or one combination of those gears to give you a certain ratio. Now, in the automatic mode, you have 9. In the manual mode, you have 6.
Right.
And I think that in the manual mode, the first gear is skipped. And then I think the automatic third gear is skipped. And then I think you lose your top gear.
Okay.
Or maybe the second from the top. Something like that.
I can't remember.
But the ratios work out to where it's pretty fluid on the manual. Because the auto is using ratios that just keep it in the peak power band.
The entire time.
Right. But, in those cars, you can actually grind gears. Because as you're changing, as you push the clutch in, you obviously pull away whatever clutch pack is engaged when you push the clutch in. And then when you shift, you are changing, you are moving a shaft in there that is moving, I think it is still moving the gear sets.
Okay.
I think, through a fork setup. And then the clutches are what's engaging it, I believe. Now that I'm saying it, I don't know if I completely understand it.
Okay.
I did watch a video on this, and I remember Christian von Koenigsegg saying that you could actually still grind gears. Like it was still a possibility. Like it wasn't just even a simulated manual. It was like a manual with multiple clutch packs. Right? But yeah, please continue.
Yeah. It's a stunning car.
It's incredible.
I think it's 1,600 horsepower.
Yeah, it was 16 or 18. It was something crazy.
Yeah, and it's got the rear end of the Jesko Absolute, and also the Agera RS. So it has the fins of the Absolute and the wing of the RS. It's so low. The wing is so low. It's stunning. Blue exposed carbon fiber, bespoke interior. It's stunning. It's a stunning car. I love everything about it except the gauge cluster, which is digital. I really wish it were like a T50 style, real gauges.
T50s are fucking cool.
That's the only thing that gets me on. And I think that if I were Mohammed, I probably would have said, hey, Christian, you got to give me a real physical gauge. But apart from that, it's just the most beautiful car.
Well, the thing about the analog gauge clusters too, you can make digital gauge clusters that look like analog gauge clusters.
You could.
But the problem with analog gauge clusters in modern supercars and hypercars is that the needles and the springs inside of them cannot react fast enough to the rev changes or the speedometer changes, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem that was first found in the Lexus LFA when it came out. That car revved so quickly that it broke the analog gauges that they put on it, which is why they had to have a digital gauge. Which is really interesting. So I don't know if that's a limitation of it. But like, for example, the BMW I own now, those gauges, although look analog, are actually digital gauges.
What do you mean?
So the mechanism, it's not a screen, but it's not driven by a cable, right? So at least to me, we should probably define digital and analog. But to me, true analog is cable-driven gauges.
Okay.
Right. Well, a speedometer cable would drive the speedometer itself, right?
Okay.
And then an analog gauge or a digital gauge that looks analog would be like something I have in the BMW, where the gauges have real needles that move and stuff like that, but it's driven off of the CAN bus system in the car.
Oh man, we're talking about different things. We're talking about different things.
And then digital would be a screen that has a projected needle.
The Koenigsegg Camera has a screen, and then it shows you wherever.
Right. That's digital.
That's what, I don't want that. I want it to be a gauge. I don't care how you make the needle move. I'm not going to know.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to see the physical needle move. So like the T50 must have your digital physical one.
Yeah.
Where it can, because the T50 revs, I think it's one of the fastest revving motors in production.
Yeah. So that car for sure has a digital CAN bus system that's running all of those gauges, but they look analog because there's an actual physical needle that moves.
I want the physical needle. So like the perfect example, the Bugatti Tourbillon, the new one, has all like real physical like the dials, right? But I don't know how fast the motor revs. Maybe it's one of your digital analog ones. I don't know.
Anything after like 2000 is going to have a digital operating system to run an analog gauge if it has an analog looking gauge.
Yeah, that like knowing that that's how it operates doesn't bother me really. That's okay. I just love the look of having a real physical gauge because it's timeless. Anything with screens gets dated eventually. There's
Yeah.
no car that's over 10 years old today with a screen that doesn't look dated.
Yes,
I would make that argument. And I would make the argument that even the finest cars now, the Camaro, which I've been drooling over this week, it's in my lock screen for my phone now, or my computer. I love it today. In 10 years, the screen's going to make it look dated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
I like analog gauges, like real analog gauges, because there's like a certain character to like how the needle bounces around and stuff from the cable, or like little inaccuracies in it. And, you know, like the Miata's funny because the tachometer, the way it bounces is off of the limiter is like super analog.
Yeah.
Versus like in a modern, like in the BMW, I've hit limiter on that car a couple times by accident. And it will move right on the limiter because it doesn't have it doesn't hold RPM at the limiter like my E90 did. The E39, it will bounce a little bit because the ECU's not as technologically advanced to have that sort of aspect to it. But like the needle is a very digital movement versus the Miata is just like it just like, you know, there's a little going wild because it's like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, and I like that.
There's a little slack in those gauges too. So when you're going really high speeds, just the swaying and the movement of the car makes the needle flex a little bit. To go like that, which is a really cool feeling.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, if you can make it that cool, Christian von Koenigsegg, but if you have to do the physical dial and the digital reader, that's cool with me too. But yeah, the car is just absolutely stunning. And in other hypercar news, the RB17 was unveiled the other day.
Oh yeah, you sent me that.
Yeah. Do you know the story behind that car?
No.
Adrian Newey is the chief aerodynamicist for Red Bull, right?
Wow.
Did you know Adrian Newey is the most decorated Formula One employee in all time?
I think I heard that, but
he has been
that is wild.
With more championship winning teams than any other human to live.
Wow.
And he's been in aerodynamics the entire time. And it's a big deal because this is his last year with Red Bull. He just announced no one knows where he's going next. So it could be Ferrari, it could be Aston Martin, who knows. But part of the reason that Red Bull were able to keep him so long is because they were like, hey, you can work on the Formula One car. We want you to work on the Formula One car, but you're also allowed to work on the hypercar because Adrian loves the hypercars. So they just unveiled this car. It's so stunning. It's not timeless, but it is very unique. It kind of reminds me of the McLaren Solus, but it's an insane looking car.
That is wild.
And it's a big deal because it's Adrian Newey's last vehicle that he's building with Red Bull.
Really?
And it's I think it's the first production vehicle to be chiefly designed by Adrian Newey.
Oh, that's cool.
But everyone's talking about it because it's a very nice looking car. And if Adrian Newey goes to Ferrari, then he can build a production spec hypercar for Ferrari.
Which would be crazy.
How fucking sick would that be? Yeah. But that it doesn't touch me the same way that the Koenigsegg does, just because the Koenigsegg was the first real hypercar that I fell in love with. I was playing Forza Horizon 3. And I was like, the goal of this game is to get the fastest car in the game, right? And the specs on those cars are really trivial. It's like this one has like 9 out of 10 speed, but like 8 out of 10 handling. It's really fucking vague. But as you spec the cars out, you want the one closer to 10. And so I did the math for like if you maxed out every single car in the game, and the best one was the Koenigsegg 1-to-1. And so that's the car that I aimed for in the game, and that's the car that I got, and it sounds so cool. And the Agera RS with the like special exhaust thing for Forza, whatever, sounded so wild. And I was like, these cars, I couldn't pronounce it. I was like, these K cars are fucking awesome. And so to see the Chimera custom built, like all the Koenigsegg's are custom spec, right? Because you're paying millions of dollars. But this is a different level of custom spec.
Yes, it is.
This isn't like I want the blue exposed carbon fiber instead of the green. This is like I want you to make a monster out of like 3 of your best cars.
Yeah.
And the auto, because you and I have had a lot of conversations before about dual clutch versus manual, like those types of things. And to have a car that effectively and genuinely has both that's got to be the closest thing to like a perfect car, like for everyone, like that everybody can enjoy.
Right.
To date.
Maybe. I think it's genius. I love it.
Yeah.
I still like a good old 5-speed or 6-speed that, you know,
T50
is just a, you know, straight up manual transmission. But I mean, the technology and what Koenigsegg has been able to put together is with that Lightspeed transmission is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Everything to do with that car and their recent projects is just insane.
Yes.
Yeah. If this whole business thing goes tits up and we have to be engineers, we can try to get a job there.
That'd be fun.
But yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. My last final closing remark. Next week is our 21st episode. Only 1% of all podcasters ever make it past episode 21. So I'm going to put together a couple talking points that are special because it is a big deal that we've stuck with it this long. We've done it for 21 weeks, which is the better part of a year, I think, with a couple gap weeks that we've had. And it's a big deal to stick with something that long, especially with all the short form content that we've been making. We don't have any signs of stopping. And to make it past that inflection point where most others stop, I think is a testament to where we're actually going with this. So we're going to have something special in store for next week. And I want to set the precedent now that I'm going to try and have some cool shit.
Heck yeah. We're going to do some cool stuff.
Yep, that's it. Take a look on our TikTok to try and find the BMW 335 video. I think it'd be cool if we splice that up and put it on TikTok and the Instagram. And I'm looking forward to next week.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and see you next week.